Hey everyone, Ed Helms here. You might know me as Andy from The Office or Stu from The Hangover, or you might know me as the co-founder of BGS. I know, I'm just as surprised as you. They let me co-found something. But here's the thing, we're doing it again. Yeah, this time we're leaping into our other deep love, the vast and vibrant world of country music, with something we're calling Good Country. Now, this isn't just another newsletter. Think of Good Country as a place. A place where you can explore, learn, and dig into all of what makes country good. Seriously, country music has so much going on these days, and it's coming from so many different deep and soulful places, and we're here to cover all of it, just as we've done for bluegrass and roots music at BGS for over a decade. So sign up now at goodcountrybgs.substack.com and let us bring you the many sides of country music straight to your inbox. Good Country. It's a nice place to be.
Okay, it's Basic Folk, a podcast where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. And if you don't know me, well, I'm Cindy Howes, and I host this podcast. Thanks so much for checking out the show today, and happy, if you are not familiar with their music, to introduce you to Corey Laitman. We'll get into a bit of what we talk about, but first, let's thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. Basic Folk is brought to you in part by Winterbirds. Their new album, Shaker Songs, takes 18th and 19th century sacred texts from American Shakers and puts it to all new progressive bluegrass compositions, exploring the poetry of this unique community. You can find Shaker Songs by Winterbirds on Bandcamp. Corey Laitman. Corey is a really interesting musician in person. Their music is vulnerable in a way that you rarely find in music. Not that it's unheard of. Musicians like Deb Talan, Edie Carey, Griffin come to mind, with a voice that basically encompasses all human emotions in 0.5 seconds. It's amazing. Corey's spirit is inspired by their vast imagination and connection to nature. We talk about it in the podcast about how humans are intrinsically connected to nature, but for most of us, that connection is not fully realized. Corey is gender neutral and uses them, they, their pronouns. They tell the story of how they came to that realization and also about the liberation they felt, like across the board. I am so humbled that they go into great detail about their struggle with an eating disorder, and to hear about their experience and how it also ties into a new freedom when it comes to clothing choices made me rethink gender norms when it comes to the way we dress in a pretty incredible way. So I was listening back to the interview a couple of weeks later after we did it, walking in the Boston Common, hearing Corey talk about how female clothing was made to emphasize a thin female body and male clothing is just like clothing. Anyways, I was observing this point in real time. This interview is really special, and I feel like I'm looking at the world just a little bit differently because of Corey, incredible human being and also fantastic musician. Hope you enjoy this conversation. We'll hear a clip from Marching Band and then get into our conversation with Corey Laitman on Basic Folk.
We all know you never stop trying to hold the boy who had sent you flying to hush that crying like a mouth wants a thumb, and his heart like a drum in a marching band.
Corey Laitman?
Laitman. Yeah.
Laitman.
Like, you're late, man. Yeah.
Did you grow up in Covington?
No. I grew up in Westchester County, in New York.
Okay.
Yeah. Are we starting?
Yeah, it started.
Neat. Great.
Did you even notice?
No, I know. It was very seamless. It felt like we were just continuing the conversation, which I guess is true. No, I grew up in Westchester County.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the name of your town?
Bedford.
What was it like?
Pretty affluent, upper class. Both my parents are doctors, and they co-own a practice in the
Whoa.
Bronx. My dad was trained as a nephrologist, which is like a kidney doctor, has a dialysis unit. My mom's a general internist. And they practice in the Bronx.
That's amazing. So growing up in Bedford, do you think that town had any impact on you as a person?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I always felt very uncomfortable in the culture. Heteronormative, kind of patriarchal environment.
Okay, what time period?
I was born in '88, and we moved there in '92.
Yeah.
So I was there from like '92 to 2006.
So wait, how old were you in 2000? How old were you for 9/11?
9/11, I want to say 12 or 13. I don't know if that's right, but that's what it feels like. I was in 8th grade.
Yeah. Okay, so very interesting. Such an interesting time in general, and then that happens.
Definitely.
Being close to the city, what was that impact like?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. So I remember the day it happened, the like slow trickle of those images out into the world started to happen.
And you were in school.
I was in school. Yeah, I remember I was in like Spanish class. And I guess there was some TV presence in the room. I remember seeing an image of the plane flying into the Twin Towers, the first plane, and thinking that it was some kind of like spoof or joke. It was one of those moments where what I was seeing was so horrific and absurd that that it was comic to me because I didn't know how else to process it. And then slowly the reality of what had happened descended, and it was like it was palpable throughout the school. And kids started getting called out of classes because there were not plenty, but like enough kids in my school whose parents worked in the city, and some whose parents worked in the Twin Towers. We had at least one parent death in my school.
Wow.
Yeah, it was intense.
Sounds like it was a very kind of had like a heavy impact on your right at the beginning of your adolescence.
Yeah, I don't frame it as a super formative moment for me, but I think just in terms of like the cultural shift from a culture of less like concentrated fear to a culture of like very concentrated fear and paranoia, I can't imagine that it didn't have an impact on me.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not to start the interview off with 9/11.
No, let's go.
Sometimes I like to hear about different people's observations about it, just because I feel like the timing of that like horrific event in society is so interesting, because society had been shifting for a number of years, and then that really like changed it to be like super extreme, and then reality TV started to hit, and then I feel like society just got more and more and more aggressive about and more divided about things. So anyways,
absolutely,
let's get back on the ground here and talk about your family, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the eldest of 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a little brother who's 3 years younger than me, who's a comic in New York City.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's cool. He's about to go on a tour, actually, a mental health tour. He has a diagnosis of schizophrenia, which has like super impacted my family.
Great. When was he diagnosed?
2006.
Can you give an overview of what that was like?
Oh, geez, yeah, an overview. Wow, how to condense this story? It's interesting. Well, we were. So there are 6 of us. It's Daniel, me, Daniel, and then my 2 little sisters who are identical twins.
Nice.
Hannah and Abigail. Yeah, they're both in nursing school right now in Boston. We were on a vacation in Montreal, I want to say, and he started at the time if I was 17, he was 14, and he just started like exhibiting these weird physical behaviors. Like he had his hand up by his scrunched up by his chest, and was just like behaving oddly. Like, do you know the term uncanny valley? Uncanny valley is like an animation term that refers to like when you have the shape and the form and the movement of a human or like a character that you're trying to animate almost right, but there's just something slightly off, and you can't quite figure out what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uncanny Valley?
The Uncanny Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it so much.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so useful. That was like the decided break. He'd been hearing voices for years, and
Was he telling you all about it?
No, not until that was like the moment of revelation. That was the moment when he finally told my parents, was during that vacation. But he'd been hearing voices for a long time.
So, is there anything else you'd like to say about your brother?
I mean, there could be so much more I could say about my brother. He's also very funny, so.
Yeah,
You
is your family very funny? You have a very, just from talking to you for like just a short while, you have like a very good sense of humor and a good sense of timing.
Oh, thanks, buddy. You too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You want to go with like let's take this show on the road?
Yeah, let's take the show on the road. Yeah, vaudeville.
Right. So your family, they funny?
I think they're funny. Yeah. My mom is not. Sorry, Mom. I don't think you're that funny, but you're very cute. You're adorable. My dad is very funny. I think my dad's hilarious, if not a bit callous. Yeah, we're a jokey family for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
What kind of kid were you, and how do you think you relate to your younger self as an adult?
That's a beautiful question.
Thanks.
Yeah. Geez, I was very performative, definitely very dramatic. I was one of those kids that liked, like, writing and staging plays with my friends, and I was always writing songs, and I think I was very dreamy and very whimsical. I liked to fantasize. I think I felt very comfortable in the world of fantasy and imagination. So definitely a creative kid. I was like a friendly kid. Super relational. Like I had
you don't
buddies.
sound shy.
No, I don't think I was shy. I think I've always been anxious. I think I've always been. I think I just have an anxious disposition, but I think I have so much energy that I kind of like use the anxiety to propel me.
Right. So it sounds like your anxiety manifests into friendliness.
Yeah, right. In order to like soothe my anxiety, I soothe other people.
Right.
Like to make myself comfortable, or it's like it's many pronged.
You're a very empathetic person.
I try to be. I think so.
Yeah.
I'm definitely affected by other people's moods and feelings.
I think that, I mean, just listening to you talk about, like, trying to make other people feel comfortable sounds like a very, like, caretaker, empathetic role.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, which comes from anxiety.
Yeah.
Thanks, anxiety.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I feel like I definitely want to come back to the imagination aspect of of your personality, so let's not forget about that. But I do want to talk about where music was in your life growing up. Did anyone else around you play music? What kind of stuff were you hearing when you were younger that was resonating with you?
Sure, yeah. My nuclear family is very unmusical. Neither of my parents sing or play instruments. My maternal grandfather plays piano. He plays jazz piano. And so I grew up with him playing a lot of standards on the piano, and he would have me sing with him. So that was my one like musical relationship. And I took piano lessons as a kid too, with Jeff Miller, who's a great guy.
Was that your first instrument, piano?
Piano was my first instrument. Okay. Yeah.
What inspired you to start writing your own music?
I don't know if anything in particular inspired me to start writing my own music. I think it was just like the way I describe it is like just as some kids like drawing or doodling or making origami or whatever kids do, it was just like a function of who I was. I was one of those kids that would go around like narrating my life in song. So I'm just musical. Yeah, that's like the thing.
What did you find performing and writing your own music was doing for your own self in terms of like how you felt it helped you or helped others around you?
Well, I think harkening back to the earlier part of our conversation, we were talking about Bedford and the culture that I grew up in. It was a very like non-emotive, rational culture, as like high achieving, or cultures that promote a certain kind of achievement often are. And I was a very sensitive kid with a lot of really big feelings, like most kids are. And I think what music gave me access to was really having a safe place to move fully into those feelings and express them in a way that felt as large as they were. You know? And it felt like magic to me. It felt like it interrupted the normal flow of time and put me in this more spacious place where I was speaking with something else. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
When did you start to take music seriously?
When did I start singing?
I mean, or are you taking it seriously now?
Well, I think I'm taking it seriously in the sense that I believe in the power of it and the magic of it, and it's just like meaningful to me, and it has helped me and supported me. And when did I start to take it seriously, though? I don't know. I think I maybe started to take it seriously when people started telling me I was good, because it was something that I always enjoyed. But I remember in high school I had a teacher, an English teacher. His name was Mr. Horn, and I supported him in running this event called Literary Mayhem, and which was like a talent show for the school. And he'd noticed that I'd recently started learning covers on the guitar and asked if I would like to collaborate. And so he gave me a poem he'd written called Florida. I was like 15 at the time, I think. And he asked me if I'd like to set it to music. And so I went home and I set it to music. And I came back in and I played it for him. And we'd originally planned on singing it together. Mm-hmm. But after hearing me play it, he was like, "Oh, I can't I can't sing that. I just need you to sing that."
I would embarrass myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first moment where I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm good at this."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. Mm-hmm. That's so, like, teachers are so important.
Teachers are potent.
Yeah.
It's a really potent role to hold in a kid or anyone's life.
Yeah, it's so wild to think of, like, a teacher, like, playing that role in your life. Like, they're just there to do way more than, like, teach you about history or to teach chorus, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're teaching you how to be a person.
Yeah, so glad you had somebody like that.
Yeah, he's cool.
How is your relationship to performance? Like, was it always easy, enjoyable, and what has that journey been like?
Mm-hmm. I'm actually a very anxious performer. I really don't like the stage audience setup. There are moments when I kind of like lean into it and feel like I can really hold the room, and it helps me to play little mental tricks. Sometimes it's helpful for me, at least of late, to pretend like or not to pretend, actually, I don't think it's pretend, to remind myself that music is a form of spell casting. That I'm like kind of like infusing at its best. It's infusing a mood into the room, like an atmosphere into the room. And so if I can remember that that's my task,
right? Like,
then I can kind of not escapism. I don't think, just like providing a container that everyone can feel comfortable inside or engaged inside.
Hello, anxiety.
Hello, anxiety. Yes, exactly. Oh, absolutely. No, it informs every aspect of my life. And the more I, go to therapy, and the more I like talk with friends about it, and the more I read, the more I see how it informs every aspect of my being, and that it's not
isn't it so mind-blowing?
It's so mind-blowing. Yeah, it really is everywhere. It just colors everything.
So, like, when you figure that out, that like anxiety is informing so many aspects of your life, like, what does that feel like for you, or what did that feel like for you?
You mean like the dawning
realization
that like, oh shit, my entire life has been led by anxiety.
Right, that there's this like thing that's like driving me forward in positive ways and in negative ways.
Gosh, how's resistance, grief, anger, grief at feeling like I'm tethered to something that doesn't give me like perfect autonomy over my decisions. Not like I believe in that necessarily, but
I feel like I just heard a little Westchester accent come out.
Really? Is it? I always thought of
necessarily.
Well, also my grandparents are from Brooklyn and Queens. Oh. So that's trickled down a little bit into my family language.
Nice that they could show up for this interview.
Yeah. Oh, hey guys. They're floating about.
Sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really remember. I think it's probably hard to like locate. I I don't think there is like a moment when I realized that my entire life has been dictated by anxiety that like led to some huge upheaval. I think it's been incremental and surprising, and you know, there have been moments where I felt like I really like had it down, and then always those humbling moments of realizing that, like, of course,
you will never have it down.
Will. I have never, and I never will. So, yeah, it's been humbling.
Yeah,
it's been really humbling to realize that there are just these energies that live in me and these like ways in which I'm built that will probably always be with me, and you know, instead of acting from a place of trying to root them out of my system, instead learning how to be in relationship with them because they're part of me. You know?
I like that.
Yeah.
Also, to be fair, I was totally projecting my experience with anxiety onto you, but thank you I loved your answer.
Cool.
Can you talk about being part of the anti-folk scene at the Sidewalk Cafe in Brooklyn?
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that world so much. I'm actually going to play. The name of the cafe is Little Skips. I'm going to play there on June 1st with my friends.
Oh, awesome.
Bo Alessi and
cool.
Yeah.
Can you
Dave
first
Clancy?
define anti-folk?
Sure. Yeah. So from what I understand, the anti-folk scene was a scene born out of a rejection of the popular music scene that was emerging in the 60s and 70s, composed of people like, you know, the people you know, like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan, and people who wrote folk music in this kind of like accessible style, that was melodic and lyrical and poetic, and certainly they were all different from one another, but they were kind of coherent as a genre. And the anti-folk movement was born of a bunch of people getting together whose styles of what they considered to be folk music didn't adhere to those qualities. They were like a little bit more experimental.
Fringy.
Yeah. They were weirder. It's a weird scene.
So it's interesting that Bob Dylan was one of your examples, because don't you think that like he like embodies the anti-folk scene? Like, it's hard to put him in any particular world. Like, yes, like he had a huge impact on that Greenwich Village scene, but he ultimately like rejected it and left it and pissed them all off.
Right. But I think he also defined it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's where like you have to kind of include Bob Dylan in the definition of that scene, because so much of that scene was born out of an imitation of Bob Dylan.
Right.
You
That's
know,
really
like
true.
Maybe not him as a person.
Right. The culture of Bob Dylan.
The culture of Bob Dylan.
The man himself.
Right? Now he's a punk.
I think. Yeah, it's just really hard to like drop him in one particular world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's interesting to hear your...
Yeah, I just think he, like, if you listen to, like, Self-Portrait or another side of Bob Dylan, I just feel like anti-folk players would probably be like, yeah, this guy's super weird.
Totally. Oh, yeah, he's incredibly weird, and I think, like, most folk artists are incredibly weird. I think most musicians are... I think people are weird, you know? And anyone who's being honest in their expression is certainly weird, because we're all, like... I mean, this is a bizarre condition we're all in.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. So anyways, anti-folk.
So anti-folk scene. So I moved to New York in 2011, something like that, and started looking for open mics and found this open mic that was run out of the Sidewalk Cafe in the Lower East Side. And the Sidewalk Cafe, at the time I moved to New York City, had been the home of anti-folk. It was like where anti-folk landed. And it was the community was centered around this open mic that happened on Monday nights. And it was just a crazy open mic. It would start at like 7 p.m. and go regularly until like the wee hours of the morning. Wow. And not even so wee, sometimes like, 4 or 5. Maybe I'm making that up. Maybe it's like a little grander in my recollection than it was in reality. But it was pretty grand. Yeah, it was just, the way I experienced it was as this intergenerational family of people who, like, the rule was support. You know, like, everyone who got up on the stage and did something, anything, was respected for that act alone. And that was like the baseline attitude of that group of people. And I fell in love and was adopted and started playing shows on bills with the people who frequented that scene, all of whom were brilliant and also flourished under like the loving gaze of the community. And it was definitely where I came of age as a musician. You know, I felt so loved and seen and supported by the people in that community. Yeah, it was really rad. Yeah, I was so lucky.
You were formerly recording under the name Rachel Laitman.
That's right, yeah.
Where did Corey come from?
Corey. So Rachel's my birth name. And I have a fine relationship with it. I think it's a very pretty name. It's also very feminizing. And when I moved to Western Mass, or a couple years after I moved to Western Mass, I started working at this respite. It's a peer respite, and it's called a FIA. And
what is that?
A peer respite. So this is a much longer conversation, but the peer model of mental health, the approach to like talking about and being with issues of mental health, and the way that operates on the level of a respite is just like the way I like to describe it is that it's an alternative for people who are going through a really difficult time and are in really extreme emotional states, who don't want to encounter people who are going to pathologize them, take away their sharp objects, hospitalize them if they talk about wanting to die, be freaked out by them if they're having experiences outside of consensus reality, like hearing voices or seeing visions. We have a very limited idea of what those things mean in this culture. And so the respite is basically like a safe place for people who are having a really hard time in one way or another, where they could come and stay for a week. There are 3 bedrooms in the house, and hang around people who can hold conversation topics like that, and who won't judge them and who will be kind to them, and they have total autonomy. They can go to work. There's no like schedule or groups. It's like anti-clinical. It's like
homeopathic
it's like the
or something.
I mean, people definitely subscribe to homeopathic ways of treatment that like who came to stay there, but there's no like uniting philosophy aside from just like being aware of different kinds of oppression. Yeah, wow. And working to address those issues. Yeah, that's kind of it's hard to give an overview, and I'm a little bit out of practice because I haven't been working there in a while. But it was a really amazing place to work. Anyway, there were a bunch of people there who were like deeper into the trans conversation and like knew who identified as trans. And it was there that I met the first people who identified as trans non-binary, and I remember meeting the first person who I'd ever met who identified as trans non-binary, and they used they them pronouns, and it felt like getting hit by a truck in a good way. I was like, oh shit, I don't have to identify as being a girl. I don't have to identify as being a boy either. Like, there's a third option. And, since I've learned that there are actually infinite options and that gender's, like, totally made up. But I remember, like, encountering that possibility and just, like, freaking out. Because I've never felt aligned with female gender. That's been a thing since I was a little kid. And I met a bunch of people who had changed their names to something less feminizing and more gender neutral, and I tried out a bunch of different names, and Corey was the one that stuck.
It's a good name.
Yeah, I really like it a lot. It means a dweller in or near a hollow.
Yeah, it does.
Isn't it fucking cool?
Yeah. So how has this transition been for you?
Everything. Yeah, it's been euphoric, it's been annihilating, and everything in between.
Wow. I saw a video of you working with a high school band.
Yeah.
And they're adorable.
I know.
And, like, so many different colors haired.
Yeah,
and
I know.
They're instruments are so good. And there's some coming on screen, like talking about you, and I was like, what pronouns are they gonna use? And then one student used they and their, and I was like, oh, awesome. How do you find people in general as you like move through the world at using your correct pronouns?
I think that, so in Western Massachusetts, in the pocket of the world that I live in, the conversation around pronouns is like part of the vernacular. You know, it's integrated into the way people talk around here and is part of our common language. And so I'm spoiled in that sense because people won't automatically assume, you know, I'm not on testosterone and I dress in all kinds of different ways. But once I leave this context, I am she/her, which I think bothered me at first because of a lot of reasons. You know, I was at the beginning of a learning curve about all the different ways that gender operates in the world, and I think I was just really pissed off. But now, like a year and change later, I'm softening again, and the material's kind of integrating, and like, of course, people are gonna refer to me as she and her. You know, if I'm gonna drop easily into one of two categories, that's the category that I'm gonna drop into in their mind, and that's fine, you know. It isn't, right? But I can't, I don't know, it's too hard for me personally, to be in such like an adversarial relationship with so much of the world. Like it's not worth it to me. If they want to have the conversation, I'll have the conversation with them, but I'm not that kind of,
Do you correct people?
Occasionally I will. If I feel safe.
Read the room.
Yeah, read the room.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't all the time though, no.
Yeah, so we were talking, and I just moved back to Massachusetts, and I'm from Massachusetts. I went to Emerson College, and that's actually where I work now. And I lived in Pittsburgh in Western PA for 11 years. I don't know if you've ever been to Pittsburgh or not.
I haven't.
It's pretty cool, but it was like barely a topic that would come up. Like, there was a theater near my house that had like non-gendered bathrooms that I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I like took a picture of it and like put it on my Instagram being like, look guys, go to the Kelly Strayhorn. You don't have to pick a gender. You could just, you know.
Yeah.
But like, that was it. And I had a friend and coworker who had many like non-binary friends, but it was all kind of like underground, you know.
Yep.
But then moving back to Massachusetts, and especially working at Emerson, it's really common for people to ask other people their pronouns and see gender neutral bathrooms, and then have people in their email signature like put their pronouns. It's just pretty awesome to see the progression in Massachusetts, and it's also great because like Massachusetts is basically like always like 17 steps ahead of the rest of the country when it comes to this kind of stuff. So like this is what's to come.
Totally.
And it's great. So going back to this topic, so from your pictures online, your outward image formerly presented very female, but that has since changed, and you told us that story. And now your clothing in particular is different than it once was. Like, you wear a lot of suspenders, you wear a lot of like androgynous clothing. Can you talk about maybe how you used to view your clothing choices versus how you view them now?
Oh my god, yes, I can. Gosh, I was just having a conversation with my partner about this, and with a group of folks who I hang out with on a weekly basis. So I think that most people who are assigned female grow up with an awareness of how they are sexually attractive to men, and that was definitely true for me. You know, I'm just beginning to dig into my own relationship with what, I don't know if I'm just beginning, but it kind of always feels like I'm just beginning to understand how much that impacted me, and, you know, among other things, my clothing choices.
Like body hair too, and like makeup and hair choices.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through so many different phases with that. Like in high school, I would like straighten my hair with a straightening iron, and I was an athlete, so I had like this very small, muscled body, and would wear belly shirts and like baggy pants. I don't know. I've always had a weird relationship with clothing.
It's like 2002, you know?
Yeah, with like little chokers and stuff. Yeah,
Avril Lavigne.
It's so Avril. Oh my god, I loved Avril. Yeah, she's got a great voice. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always been a little clothing confused, and I continue to be a little clothing confused. But one thing that's very clear to me is the way socialization plays into, or at least played into my clothing choices, and I think to some degree plays into everybody's clothing choices, especially if, you know, if we're talking about being in a place where you haven't interrogated gender at all. I remember the first time...
Wait, can you explain interrogated gender real quick?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just, like, thought about the role of gender in your life. Like, we were talking about anxiety before, and how anxiety, like, once you realize it's there, you realize that it's informed every decision you've ever made and every, like, way you've ever been. I feel like gender is very similar to that.
Oh, okay.
Like, its fingers are just in everything. I remember the first time that I went clothing shopping specifically for boys' clothes, for men's clothes. I went to the Salvation Army in Hadley with my partner, and...
When was this?
This was like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I remember having this experience of seeing, in such a stark way, the difference between the men's clothing section and the women's clothing section. Like, there's so much more ornamentation and variety, and so much more emphasis on like boobs and stomach, and like you could just see how women's clothing is designed to like accentuate and elevate different parts of, like, to show off different parts of the female form in these like very particular ways that are tailored toward, like, I don't know, like celebrating a certain kind of body, you know, like a thin body. And, like, the men's clothing section was so simple. It was such a relief to just be like, this is a shirt, and these are shorts. I'm just gonna put them on my body and, like, not think about it that much. It was like a miracle, you know? I mean, I feel like this conversation kind of ties into relationship with food and relationship with body image, and really with everything. Its tendrils are just so, like, ever present. But I was telling a story yesterday about going to the beach dressed in, like, cargo shorts and a polo shirt for the first time, kind of like trying out this new wardrobe. And I was walking on the beach, and I sat down on a rock, and I felt so calm, like, looking at the waves and, like, hearing the crash of the water against the rocks, and there were some gulls hovering nearby, and I just remember, like, my body feeling relaxed in a way that felt unfamiliar, and I realized that it was because I was not holding in my stomach. For, like, the first time on a beach, I wasn't holding in my stomach. So that was impactful. Yeah, I feel like I can't talk about clothing without talking about, especially like my journey with clothing, without talking about female socialization, without talking about body image, without talking about food, without talking about, like, misogyny,
right? So
male gaze, and yeah,
your relationship with your body has changed.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it?
Yeah.
How is it now? Better?
Considerably, yeah. I mean, it's still not perfect. I have a history of anorexia and overexercising, and yeah, I feel like during the period of time when I was really in it, I just, like, grooved those neural pathways down in such a way that I don't think that is ever going to leave me. I think it's always going to be like anxiety. It's always just going to be part of the way that I'm built, but I have a much gentler relationship with all of that now. I mean, I still have some, like, restrictive tendencies, and I like to exercise. And sometimes I feel anxious about, like, going a couple of days without exercising. Like, I still am conscious of weight. So I don't feel totally liberated, and I would be surprised if I ever, like become totally liberated from any thoughts or like obsessive thinking about that. I don't know. I actually do feel kind of liberated from obsessive thinking about it, because it used to be like every waking moment was tailored around food.
Wow.
I can say that it does not direct my life anymore. So I am like significantly healed, for sure, and the gender journey has definitely been a part of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, your recent imagery online and on your album artwork features you in nature with these like really cute comic book drawings of like wings and Robin Hood type of a hat, like kind of giving off the impression that you have a very vivid imagination. So what is your history with imagination, particularly mixed with nature, and why is it important for people to know that about you with these images?
Lovely. Yeah. Well, those images are images from the tarot, from the Rider-Waite tarot deck. Do you have a relationship with tarot?
No.
No? Do you know what tarot is?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's like they're reading your fortune.
Kind of, yeah. It's definitely
It's
like
reading a person's image or whatever.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think the way that I understand it is sort of like it's like a Rorschach test, or not a test, but it's just it's a way for me of like being in relationship with the way that I'm thinking or with what's happening in my life in a kind of like guided encounter. But yeah, the image that shows up on the cover of the album, all of the artwork was done by Micah Matthias, who is an excellent cartoon artist and also my partner. And the image that he chose to superimpose on that one photo of me is the fool, the archetype of the fool.
Oh, with the hat and
with the hat.
Little dog.
Yeah, the fool, which is the first card in the series of what are called the Major Arcana cards, which are kind of like the big sweeping archetypes representations in the tarot deck. So I just wanted to credit him and talk a little bit about what he was thinking there.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it too. My imagination in nature, I grew up on what had been a pine tree farm, like a Christmas tree farm. So I grew up with a lot of really amazing in Bedford.
Okay.
Yeah, so I grew up with a lot of really amazing trees on my property, or my parents' property. Yeah, I definitely encountered a lot of wonder and whimsy and spaciousness and solitude, like privacy. I think my first experiences of, the magic that happens in the kind of like psychic space of solitude happened in nature. And so I'm sure that connection has followed me. I'm sure that experience was formative. Yeah, I just think nature's super brilliant, and it's like, I feel like it's really easy the way that the world is set up to forget that our bodies and our minds are not separate from that brilliance. That like we are also nature, we also count. And so I have a lot of friends around here. I don't know if you're aware of this yet, but there's like a glut of herbalists in Western Massachusetts and people who are really into foraging for wild edibles and people who are really into these practices. And I've learned a lot, particularly from my friend Carly Leusner, who has a wild foods CSA called Acorn Kitchen, and who's just totally, totally brilliant.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, she's fascinating. Yeah.
Is she a chef, too?
She is a chef.
Does she do, like, dinners where you can eat wild...
she does. Yeah. She hosts.
Could you put me on her mailing list?
I totally could. Yeah, I absolutely will. Yeah, I absolutely will. Yeah, she's really, really engaging and tells these amazing stories about the intelligence of plants and how we have evolved, how like the human organism has evolved in relationship to plants.
Wow.
And we're divorced from that at this point in our development because of obvious reasons,
Right. But even, like, thinking about the basics of what you learn in school, like, we breathe out carbon dioxide and we breathe in oxygen. And trees do the exact opposite.
Yeah, we're in totally intimate relationship.
Yeah, we're in a relationship.
Yeah, and it's totally like, it's so sad that we're so alienated from the fact of that. Mm-hmm. You know, like we don't think about that, or like we're not encouraged to think about that anyway most of the time. So
I want to talk about your voice. It has this quality that feels like so transportive. There's like a feeling of like youth, nostalgia, and that sense of imagination. And also there's this like really intense vulnerability about your voice. Particularly in, what's the first track called?
Marching Band?
Marching Band.
Yeah.
Where you like, you're singing in your this beautiful voice, and then all of a sudden you take it up to like the upper register, and it feels like, it almost to me feels like when I first was listening to it, I'm like, I feel so uncomfortable, but also very comfortable. You know, like, I don't know if you share that feeling of like that vulnerability your voice has, but what is your relationship to your voice, and like, do you try to like cultivate any of what I just mentioned into it?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. Thank you for that reflection. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I actively try to cultivate vulnerability in my singing, but I do try to embody the songs honestly. The only stuff that I write that I like is vulnerable. You know, I'm at a point right now where I could just like pop out a song where I could like just write like verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus. You know, I can do that. It's not an interesting
like a song
exercise.
Factory.
Yeah, no. I think the music that I've always been the most compelled by has been music that is like what you just described. You know, like music that has a lot of pain in it and a lot of beauty. Do you know Martin Prechtel? Mm-mm. He's this Guatemalan fellow who identifies as a shaman, but I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know how to talk about that. But he has this talk called Grief and Praise, where he talks about how grief and praise are so interwoven. They're like the same, they're like different expressions of the same feeling. And I really resonate with that idea.
Yeah,
that like grief is praise for the thing you've lost, and praise is
you
grief for the
would
thing you have.
like clutch your chest if you were expressing either to somebody.
Yes. Yeah, like true grief and true praise.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird.
So that's like the place, that's the vulnerability.
Weird.
Super weird.
Super weird. Cool. All right, so we're gonna take a break, and then we'll do the lightning round, which you don't know about.
Whoa.
But you're gonna love it.
Cool.
Right? Is that cool?
Yeah, it's great.
All right, we'll be right back.
Basic Folk receives support from McDean, songwriters who love each other. McDean would be delighted to send you a free CD of their first EP, The Sampler Plate. Email lin@mcdean.co, lin@mcdean.co to get one. And thanks to WIUP in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which airs Basic Folk 2 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. You can listen on 90.1 if you're in the Indiana, PA area, or at their website, wiupfm.org.
Corey Laitman, are you ready for the lightning round?
I guess.
Oh, yes. So this is, you just give me one-word answers or a sentence or two if you want to expand
Okay.
a little bit. Okay, here we go. What is your favorite U.S. city?
Oh, darn. Northampton.
Dogs, cats, or something else?
Both.
Wow. What is your coffee order?
Dark roast. Cream.
First album you bought with your own money?
Don't remember the name of it. Nico Case. Blacklisted?
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
First concert?
Elton John.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Did your mom take you?
Sure did.
Wow. That sounds like a classic mom move.
Yeah.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Yes.
What was the last one you listened to that you loved?
Leisure Activism. Healing Justice podcast.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is your dream collaboration?
Dream collaboration. I'm really jealous of Phoebe Bridgers and Connor Oberst.
Do you like peanut butter?
Sure do.
Smooth or chunky?
Chunky.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Gibson or Martin or Fender?
Fender.
Flying or invisibility?
Flying.
What is a random fact I might not know?
I have a moon tattoo on my back.
It's a good one. All right, that's it.
Awesome.
You did well.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
Corey Laitman, thank you so much for participating in the lightning round and for being on Basic Folk.
Yeah, thank you so much for the conversation. It was awesome.
You can find Corey Laitman's debut album, Seafoam, out everywhere. Came out last year. It's really lovely listen. I hope you do check it out. Corey, very special human. So glad to be connected to them and hope to catch them live sometime in the future. And you as well. You can check out show notes at cindyhouse.net. Laura McCarthy produces Basic Folk. Alex Stanton of Townspeople does our music. Lindsay Myers is our business manager. I'm Cindy Howes. You can subscribe to the Basic Folk newsletter at my website, cindyhouse.net. You can also sign up for our Facebook group, Basic Folk Basics. And we will talk to you next week. All right, thanks for making it all the way to the end. You're a real pal. Okay, bye.